All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the stream. Today, it's been a while actually since I last streamed. I hope you have been well and the new year has treated you right. So today, what I'm planning on doing is I am planning on reintroducing myself into React and relearning React from the very basics, because I feel like there are some fundamentals that I could brush up on, and things like routing that uh, I could relearn just so that I'm ready for the next project that I build. Planning on picking up streaming more frequently again. And I'm gonna start off with you know this course. So let's see how far we can get. It says it's about a 12-hour course. I think with the pace that we will be going at, it might take a little bit longer. But we'll just take it one step at a time. I should double check and see how the stream sounds like on your end, because I know what is happening here. How does it sound? I can hear an echo for a moment. Okay, I think I sound well. And we'll just do this. So let's start her up. Cool. So static pages in React. That's I guess what we're going to start doing. Purpose of this is just to really like I said, go over our fundamentals again.
Everything we need in order to build
I'm
a
gonna try and
basic
lower
static
this
page using
lo-fi
React.
music here.
And I know what you might be thinking, but I already know how to make static web pages.
Yes.
I know you're probably super excited to really dive in and learn dynamic web applications with React, and we are going to get there in this course. But in order to start off, this section is all about learning the basic syntax and you could say the vocabulary of React.
Because so we're going way back.
The best approach to learning React is to first start learning how to think in React.
Okay, that's fair.
The reason for this is because React really does kind of change the game in terms of how you build applications. Later in this section, we are going to start learning the differences between declarative and imperative programming.
Okay.
And you're going to find that React approaches web development in a completely different way. So the point is, we're first going to be dialing in our brains to start thinking in terms of using React to build websites by first building some static web pages, not unlike the ones that you normally would just use HTML and CSS for. So this might not seem terribly exciting right now, but I think you'll soon see that writing composable, reusable components in React can actually be a bit addicting and pretty fun.
Okay.
So cool. I know that you'll find a lot of benefit in starting off with the milk before we get to the meat, or of course we have a vegetarian option as well. The content in this section will be driven forward by the goal of creating our first static web page in React. And that's the page you see here in the screenshot that has a list of fun facts about React.
Nice.
Now, the screenshot is actually also a link to the Figma file for the design of this page. So if you click the screenshot, it will open up in Figma. You'll have
Oh no.
to make sure that you log into your Figma account.
Okay.
If you don't have one yet, it's free to create. And clicking the screenshot will lead you to a...
Let me see. Am I logged in? Let me just get this off screen. Okay, I see.
Sort of shared file that everyone will have access to.
Leah, welcome to the stream. How are you?
You'll see something near the top that looks kind of like
React.
this, where it's got React facts.
Oh, I like your emote.
Your best bet is going to be to click that drop-down arrow. Go
How
over
are you?
to
Happy New Year.
duplicate to your drafts and click that.
Your T-spill was great. I really enjoyed it.
Your own drafts is going to make it possible for you not only to edit the design if you want to change it a little bit, but also to help you avoid any distraction you might see on the design page of anybody else's cursors or maybe some comments that they may have left. So I'll go back to this design here. Make sure to click on it now so it leads.
I'm doing well, thank you. Thank you for stopping by the stream. I I might I'm hoping, I'm close. I'm close. I had a second interview today, and they booked a third for Monday. So, fingers crossed. We'll see what happens on my end. Um, it's not exclusively a technical role. It's more of a support role, but whatever works. And there are opportunities. The reason why they have the position open is because it's a backfill for somebody who stepped into a technical role from this position. So it has happened in the past, and I could potentially do it again. How's your new job? How's working from home?
At least the URL gets saved up in your tabs in your browser. And lastly, we're going to look at the different topics that we'll be covering in this section. So what are we going to learn about? Well, first we're going to learn why we even care about React in the first place. I think knowing why React is so exciting and so popular will help make your learning journey of React a much simpler one, because you'll be so excited about what you'll be able to create in the end by using React. We'll also be talking about a proprietary React syntax called JSX, and we'll get to see how that sort of changed the game for React and made writing React a much more familiar experience. Then we'll dive into creating custom components, and you'll learn all about what that means and how to actually do that yourself in React. And of course, in order to build our project, we're going to need to know how to apply CSS styling.
And
again, the goal is for us to be able to build this simple static page.
A step in the right direction is still a step in the right direction, right?
So without any further ado, let's jump right into the deep end and start writing our first React code.
Great. So I'm going to start doing some code. Hello, React. I see. Okay. So this is a video. This is an 8-minute video. Oh my goodness. The job is good. Still not sure if it's going permanent yet.
Hands on the keyboard.
So I've been applying to more jobs too, but working from home is amazing. Yeah, and I feel like the perk of working from home is that you can still slip in a couple of extra applications here and there. And like in a similar vein to you, I don't think I'm going to stop applying either. I think it makes a lot more sense for me to like continue applying in hopes that I can force a developer like position. But I mean, like, worst comes to worst, I still like have my evenings and my weekends that I can do my developer work on the side by myself, right? So it ends up being like having a position that will help cover the bills, and then on the side doing things that are more of a passion project, in hopes of becoming like more of a permanent thing, like this.
Typing some React code as soon as possible, mostly just to show you that React is not a scary library to be working with. So let's see how we can set up React. Now, I like to think of there as being an easy way to set up React in your project and a correct way of setting React up in your project. For our sake in learning, we're going to start with the easy way, which will also make it so that you can actually just do this in your local environment. Hopefully you're following along here on Scrimba.com. But if you're curious and you're interested, you can always do this on your local environment as well. Now you can see I have a very basic HTML page set up. I have nothing.
Wait, what? Is there a... Oh, there is. Okay, so I play the video.
In my JavaScript at all, and CSS is minimal.
Oh, okay.
And we're going to walk through this together.
Interesting.
Now, I have some slides here, and you can actually click on this screenshot, and that will send you to this exact page.
Okay.
In the React documentation, it tells you how you can include React into your project. And we can actually
I'm hoping it ends up being permanent for you, so that
from a CDN.
You don't end up
we can just copy
having to
these
continue
two
looking
script tags
like
here
on a more
and
permanent
start
basis.
writing React code. There's a little more to it, but what I'm going to do is click here, and that's going to open me up to the React page. I'm just going to copy the two script tags that you can see, and over in my index.html, I'm going to put it in the head here. Let me fix the indentation.
Oh, and I've pulled it in the head. They start off with their scripts early. Where's my... Oh, so he's just... I see.
in the React library and another library called React DOM. Theoretically, this is all I need in order to start writing some React code. Now,
Okay.
I'm going to
So this
take
is the
it one
static web
step
page.
further, and that's because just pulling in React and React DOM is going to be pretty extremely limiting in terms of using the power of React, unless we also pull in something called Babel. I'm not going to jump in too deep into why we need to pull in Babel. For now, all I'm going to do is click on this screenshot here, which will take me again to a page where I can copy the script tag that you see.
Okay. Yeah. I hope so too, but yeah, I agree. It doesn't hurt to just keep applying. Yeah. I mean, it almost feels like that you can't get too comfortable in a sense, right?
And I will paste that in underneath this script tag. And if we look really closely below here, it says you can use any JSX. We'll cover what JSX is later in any script tag by adding type equals text/babel. So I'm going to do that here in my script tag down here. Type equals text/babel.
So
And that's all the setup we
confused here. Is he writing on my behalf? Am I supposed to be following on a separate code editor? Is that what he said? They said, hopefully you are following us here. So if I'm following there... Huh.
you really need. By pulling in the React-DOM library in this script tag, I now have access to a global variable called React DOM. I'm going to use that to render something to the screen. Once again, I'm going to be covering everything that we're talking about here. It's totally okay if this is moving pretty quickly. React-DOM.render allows me to render something that looks very much like HTML. Now, this might be blowing your mind a little bit because it probably looks a little strange writing some HTML inside of my JavaScript. We're going to see how this is kind of one of the beautiful things that React has added so that we can write really declarative code. Now, let's put something inside this H1 that's meaningful. We had hello React over here. Maybe I'll say hello everyone. Okay, in my index.html, I'm going to get rid of this H1 so we're not confusing this H1 with what I'm seeing over here. Now, React-DOM.render, the first thing is what do I want to render to the screen? The second thing is where do I want to render it? Well, let's go to our HTML.
Okay, so he'll tell you to pause and do the code yourself when he wants you to do it. You can just click the screen to type your code without needing to go to your IDE. Right now, he just wants you to pay attention. Okay, I see. Thank you.
And I'm going to create a div here, just a completely empty div, and I'm going to give it an ID so that I can select it. We'll call it root because this is going to be like the root of our entire application. I like to think of this div as a container for the entire website that we're going to build in React. And now that I have a place where I can put my H1 here, I'm going to select it with a regular DOM API document.getElementById root. And surprise, we've written some React code. I'm going to hit save. We'll see that it tells me hello everyone. In a single line of code, I was able to use React to insert something that looks very much like an H1. Obviously, this is a little different because we're still inside JavaScript. And I was able to put it right inside of this real DOM element in our index.html. Now, I have an entire lesson that's dedicated to understand.
He's just like, what do you want?
There's no cat there, Kobe.
No cat.
Oh, man.
He literally was just standing there for like 2 minutes.
He's just looking at you. He's like,
did there and like he was looking, and I just went and got water, and like he's still standing.
Understanding exactly what's going on here, but in an effort to get your hands on the code, get a quick win.
So this is, I guess, where he says like we will start writing.
It's not too scary. I'm going to give you a few seconds of silence where you can pause the screencast and study this line of code, and then I'll be erasing it and letting you type it again from scratch.
All right. So it's React-DOM.render. And then we're going to render an H1 component. Hello, everyone. And then it's going to be document.getElementById, which is just regular JavaScript. And we're going to get the root ID. Cool.
In fact, let me write that down as a little challenge here. Okay, pause the screencast here. Spend just a minute memorizing this line of code. Do that now.
Yeah, already done.
And then I will add a little comment with the next part.
Rewrite the line
Okay,
of code.
your time to shine.
All right. So it's React DOM dot render, and we're gonna do an H1, and it's gonna say hello everyone exclamation point, and then we're gonna close the H1, and then it's going to be document dot get element by ID, and we're going to be looking for the root element. Close this.
Rewrite the line of code as best.
It's gone. React DOM dot render. Again. So in H1, it's hello, comma everyone. Close the H1 and document dot get element by ID and root. Just copy this just in case.
You can from memory. You don't have to put hello everyone or hello React or whatever. You even
Oh right.
don't have to use
What I should do is run the code. You are using the in-browser Babel transformer. Oh, perfect. Okay, it works.
an H1
Nice.
like I did. You can put whatever HTML you want in there.
And my
So pause the screencast now and work on
backwards
that.
capitalization also showed up.
Because I pulled in that React DOM library in my CDN, I have a global variable called React
In its CDN, which was here. Okay.
DOM, and it has a render method, which allows us to render something to the screen, or kind of, in other words, place something on the screen. And I don't know, let's do a paragraph this time, just to switch it up a tiny bit. Say, hi, my name is Bob. Okay, so that's the element that I want to place inside of this div. Again, this div is a container for the actual elements that I plan on putting on the screen. And the second parameter that I need to include with React DOM.render is,
by the way, for those who are still around,
a DOM node that I have to go select with document.getElement by ID, or
like,
because I can also get DOM nodes with something like query selector, that would work just as well. In this case, I'd have to put #root because that's how query selector works. It's the ID of root. Just so this isn't confusing, we'll just keep it as getElement by ID for now, but just so you know, either one should work just fine. So the first parameter is what do I want to place on the screen, and the second one is where should I be placing this? I imagine under the hood, what render is doing is it's taking this DOM element that we are grabbing with getElement by ID,
than the music, but it sounds
running
good to me.
something similar to .append or .appendChild.
Thank you.
It. And what is it appending? It's appending this paragraph. We're going to see that it's a little more complicated than that, but that's a good way to kind of build a mental model for yourself as to how this is actually working. So I haven't refreshed the page yet, which is why this still says hello everyone. I'm going to hit save, which will refresh my browser, and there we go. Hi, my name is Bob. This time it's a paragraph instead of a header element, and that's awesome. We have written React in a single line of code. You might have noticed that our console is popping up with this error. You're using the in-browser Babel transformer. Be sure to pre-compile your scripts for production. A bunch of jargon here that may not totally make sense to you. And that's fine. That's a symptom of us setting up React the easy way instead of the correct way. Soon down the road, we'll be kind of shifting our setup here, and that warning will go away. And awesome. Okay, because this is Scrimba, you can always delete this. If maybe you weren't able to memorize that, you can try deleting it, rewriting it again from scratch. Practice with it. I'm going to ask you to do that a million times throughout this course because the only way to learn React is to write React as much as you can. Now, I have found it really helpful for my own learning to understand why the heck I even care about React in the first place. So in the next couple screencasts, we're going to be talking about some of those really awesome benefits that come with using React as our library for building web applications. But as always, if you want to spend more time with this, go ahead and do that. Pause, click into the editor, start typing what you want to type, practice it. And when you're ready, I will see you in the next lesson.
Do I still need these open? Figma? There are many people on this. Oh my goodness. Changes you made have not... Okay, leave. There are many people on this. Oh my goodness. Hi everyone, nice to meet you. Can I... Am I able to turn off all of these people? This looks overwhelming. I'm here with someone specific. You can make a copy of the Figma file. That's also true. Save local copy. Wait. I don't want the local copy. It's not under share either, is it? If I press new from sketch file. Nope. Oh, then maybe I can just go to my downloads and all files. Did it not download under my downloads? Try clicking under where it says React Facts. Oh. Duplicate to your drafts. Okay. We'll do that. File duplicated to your drafts. Perfect. Thank you, Leah. Oh. Okay, cool. Now this is at least something that we can read. No, we're good for now. Alright. We'll start this next video.
If you
it's
know
another
my teaching
2-minute.
style, I wanted to include a practice in here. Essentially, you're
Okay,
just
nice.
going to be rewriting that same line of code that we just wrote in the last lesson.
Figure
However,
out
this
how
time
to
we'll
render.
extend it just a little bit. I want you to see if you can figure out how to render an unordered list with 2 or more list items inside. Last
Okay.
time we just rendered a paragraph. You can see it's still kind of left over here. If I refresh that, that'll disappear. I've left the entire setup here for you. We're still pulling in the script tags for React, React DOM, and Babel. So essentially your main focus is just to rewrite that same one-liner of code, but see if you can figure out how to add a couple more elements inside, like having an unordered list with some nested list items. Pause here and try to work on that challenge.
Okay. Let's see.
There's me.
So what do we want to do? We want to have it render, right? So in our React DOM, let's do this. We'll do, let's see, for clarity's sake, right? And we'll say li, and it doesn't like that, but we will see. Okay, maybe it's just because oh. Okay. And then there was one more component that I needed to and it was, oh yes, where were we going to put it? We were going to put it in our document and get element by ID, and we were going to target our root file, right? And then we can just close this. So we want it to render, and it should render an unordered list with 2 list items, if I'm correct. Oh, perfect. Nice. We got it. Oh no, did I lose my code again? I did lose my code again. This is quite annoying, to be honest.
Okay, pulling in the React DOM library that gives us access to a render method. Before we did a simple paragraph like this and put some code inside. However, I can put this as an unordered list and then just actually stick some list items inside of here. So it's going to look a little confusing
If
at
you click
first.
the yellow
I'll clean it
dot,
up
you should
in
be able
just
to
a
see your
minute.
code
We
again.
have list items.
Oh, look at that. Are you a Scrimba genius?
Item, we'll just say thing 1, and I'll do another
Not just
list
Scrimba, but
item
like Figma as well.
here. Thing 2. Okay. Now I'm going to move this onto its own line here, this whole HTML thing right there.
Look, he's
and
even
the
doing what
second
I
parameter
did.
I need to separate with a
I came
comma
first, except mine
is
was a little
where
bit more
to put
legible.
this. So I'm going to use document.getElementByID root. And
I
let's
spent a
cross
lot
our
of time
fingers, see how
on
this
this React
goes.
course, and I finished the
Cool.
TypeScript
Okay.
course last
Hopefully
night.
that was some good practice.
couldn't
Now
find the
let's
TypeScript
keep moving
course.
forward and learn a little bit more about why we care about React.
Okay, so while this is loading, I couldn't find, leave. All courses. Because I wanted to also do the TypeScript course, to be honest with you. Thank you for this. Okay, I think now it should be in my... Thank you for the link, I appreciate that. Oops, I need to move my car. What did I post on my Instagram? No, it was not added. Can I add this? Primitive types, structural types, more advanced types, and then, okay. Oh, nice. But how do I add this to my list of... Leave course, unenroll? No. So, if I'm enrolled in it, alright, well, whatever. I have the link. I'll save it for later, actually. We're just going to do this, and we're going to put that under 100 devs. We'll close this, and we'll get back to the course. We can get chat. If we are not on top of our game, we can get easily distracted, and if we get easily distracted, we might just go completely off route.
One more thing that was highly requested from the first time I recorded this React course was how can I set this up on my local environment? Everything that I'm doing will be done on scrimba.com so that you can interact with the same code that you see me writing. However, it's also a good experience to run it locally on your own computer and get a feel for what it would be like to actually develop React on your own computer. Again, our setup here is more of the easy way than the right way, but for now what you can do is you can click the little gear icon in the lower right of your Scrimba editor, which will press that like you like on search for an extension.
Okay, so this
Inside
is
of Visual Studio Code, which is what
live
you see
server,
in
I
this
see.
screenshot, there's a menu icon for some extensions, and you'll
Oh,
need
he's just going to... This is just installing it on your IDE. Okay. I'm going to skip through this because that's not really what I'm here for. So the first part of React is 2 hours. Maybe we might be able to finish that. 33 lessons. Oh no, that's actually a lot. Oh, we'll see. Okay. Well, we're already 6 lessons in.
Let's spend a little bit of time understanding why we even care to learn React. One of the main reasons that people will talk about is how React allows us to write composable code. So what exactly do I mean by composable? Well, an analogy that I came up with has to do with sculpting. If you think of the statue of David, for example, this statue was created originally from a single giant block of marble that was then sculpted down to the sculpture that we know today. So in the end, what results is one giant single piece that makes up this piece of art. Now, what if instead of starting with one giant piece, we instead used a bunch of small pieces to put together something that is greater? These are Lego bricks that obviously are small, each in their own right, that were put together to create something large. In this example, they all kind of work together to accomplish a goal, so to speak, the goal of looking like the statue of David. Now, this example is not perfect because the original statue of David obviously is more beautiful than this replica made of Lego bricks. But hopefully the concept makes sense. Let's look at an example in actual web development.
Okay.
What I have here is copy and pasted from the Bootstrap website. If you're not familiar with Bootstrap, that's really not important right now, but it's enough to know that these 30 or 40 lines of code, copy and pasted from the Bootstrap website, represent a navigation bar that is pre-styled. Now, in the old days of web development, a single page on a website was usually a single HTML page. So if this is just the nav bar, a lot of times those web pages would end up being thousands and thousands of lines of HTML code, essentially making it one giant sculpture. Well, with modern frameworks like React, we can take code like this and we can put it into our own custom components. And we can put those components together to make something that is larger. But in our case, our code becomes a lot more maintainable and a lot more flexible.
Okay.
You can see I've given these kind of silly names
My
to
awesome
show you
nav
that
bar.
these are not regular HTML elements. I can combine elements together that are real HTML elements, like you see here, into my own custom component called, for example, my awesome navbar or my awesome footer. We're not quite ready to dive into the syntax of React quite yet, but I'm going to give you a taste of it and a chance to play with it before we move on. So let's see this in practice. Over here you can see I have my React DOM.render and I'm rendering a custom component called navbar. And if I scroll up, you'll get a chance to see how I created that navbar. As a quick aside, one thing you might notice is that I'm using class name everywhere instead of class. That's not a mistake, that's just how you have to assign classes in React. We're going to cover that later. But for now, I'd like to give you a challenge that's going to require you to deduce what I've done here and try to replicate it for yourself. So let me put that here. Okay, your challenge is to see the navbar component that I have created and see if you can deduce how to create your own component called main content.
Main
return
content.
something really simple like a single H1 element. And afterwards, I want you to render it below the navbar. You'll have to figure out how to render it below the navbar.
Okay.
Now, I've changed this a little bit for reasons that we'll talk about soon. But this line here, 51, this is where you're going to figure out how to render your own custom component main content.
Okay.
So first, build your custom component, looking at my example above to try and figure out how to do that.
Yeah.
And secondly, render that component down here in React DOM.render.
Sounds
Pause
good.
the screencast and work on this challenge.
Okay. So let's see. He has a function, navbar, and it returns a full-on nav component with an anchor tag, a button that has a span inside of it. Can I run this? Will this show anything? Yeah. Okay. So that's the anchor tag. I see. And it leads me to nowhere. Cool. All right. I think this should be simple. So if I want to create a function called main component, we'll do this. We'll do function main, it's content, sorry. And we're going to return, and in React, typically it's easier if we just do this. We'll do h1 and say, hello, hello chat. And we'll close this h1, and then in here, on line 57, we're going to import our component main content. And it's a self-closing tag, and I think we can run here, and it says, hello chat, welcome to Scrimba. Perfect. Okay, it's
following
blank.
the example above, we see that I created this component by creating a function, and the name of the function is the name of my component. So I will open up that function and return the content that I want to show up on my page. Above, I created a set of parentheses because I have many elements that I'm trying to return. I'll just do that just to keep things consistent for now. We'll create our H1 that says I'm learning React. And secondly, I can take my main content and I can render it by making it look kind of like an HTML element. In this case, it's a self-closing one, so I have main content as a single tag here, and if I hit save, we'll see that my H1 actually showed up on my page. And that's the concept of composability. It goes quite a bit deeper than this. We're going to see how we can make our components much more composable and reusable, but for now, let's move on to another reason why people really love React, and we'll cover that in the next lesson.
Cool. Why is it declarative? Yeah, we'll leave here. Sounds good.
Another major reason people love React is because it's something that we call declarative. So
Okay.
let's talk about declarative. To understand declarative, it's helpful to know that its opposite is something called imperative. When a program is declarative, we can simply tell it what should be done. More specifically, it's like the computer saying, just tell me what to do and I'll worry about all the nitty-gritty details on how to get it done.
Okay.
Its opposite, imperative, is when we need to tell the program how it should be done. Like the computer saying, I need you to describe to me every step along the way how to do something, and then I'll do it.
Okay.
Up until now, if you've mostly been just using vanilla JavaScript anytime you needed to create elements on the page, you've been doing it in an imperative way. In fact, let's go look at what that has been like. I've commented out my React DOM.render, and I'm going to put a check.
All right. So I'm going to pause here, and I'm going to make this slide of Anki and say, code is, I think he said composable, and it is also declarative. React is also declarative, right? Instead of imperative. I'm just gonna say instead of imperative, just to remember down the road, of imperative.
Challenge
Cool.
here for you. Okay, your challenge is
So they
to
have the challenge
recreate
now.
this above line of code where we are rendering something to the screen using vanilla JavaScript by creating and appending an h1 to our div with the ID of root.
Okay.
We have our div ID of root. You'll need to select it and then append a new element. And I give you the step-by-step instructions right here. One little caveat is I don't want you using inner HTML because that kind of breaks the analogy down a little bit. Generally speaking, this is actually just a good way to practice the vanilla JavaScript that you have been learning so far, so it's always good to give it some practice. I'll give you a couple lines here, pause the screencast, and work on this challenge.
All right. Well, let's see what it's asking for us to do here. So the challenge is to recreate the above line of code in vanilla JavaScript by creating and appending an h1 to our div root without using inner HTML. So create a new h1 element, give it some text content, and then give it a class name of header, and then append it as a child of the div root. All right. Recreate the above line of code in vanilla JavaScript. I can't remember like what append create h1. Oh yeah, create element. Okay, cool. So it's document.create element, and what was it? In quotations h1, right? And then give it some text context. And then is it going to be query selector? Yeah. So then we'll do document dot query. So I don't know if this is going to work. My vanilla JavaScript is kind of rusty, so this is why the active recall is going to be good. Query selector. Oops. h1 dot inner text is hello chat, and after that give it a class name of header. Assign class JavaScript. Get element by ID dot class list dot add. Okay. And so it's like document dot query selector h1 dot, what was it? Class list dot add, and we'll give it a class of header as the instruction, as per the instructions, and then append the child dot div root. Okay, let's see append child. How does this work? Append child and the end. Not node. Element dot append child. Differences from okay. Let and then let's see. Document.append child. How does this work? Yeah. And then text node is equal to this. And it's node.append child text node, which is water. Of root. Document.get element by ID. Yeah. Dot get element by ID root dot append child h1, right? Let's see if we can run this and if it comes up with anything of inner text. Will this work? It does work. Well, look at that. We know how to write vanilla JavaScript. Well, that's encouraging. At least we still can hold on to our developer title.
Okay, let's work on this. So I'm going to create an H1 and I'll use document.createElement and I'll make an H1. And then if I'm giving it some text content,
he even named it the same thing that I did.
Text
H1
content property of this DOM node. And
you know what they say about
I don't know, maybe this is an imperative way to program.
What's the
saying?
saying?
I need to give it a class name, so I'll use the class name.
Oh, he did a different way. He did text
content.
content.
Set it
okay.
Equal to, I think we said header. And finally, I need to append it to
my smart minds think alike?
ID of root. So first I need to say document get element by ID root, and then use the append property or method to append my H1 to the DOM. So when I hit save, it should show up. This is an imperative way to program. Perfect.
Perfect.
Now this example's a little bit on the nose because if you
so
were
imperative
really
way
just
of
putting something
programming
static
is annoying.
that had nothing to do with user interaction, you probably would just go to your HTML page and stick it right inside the div here, right? But with React, we're building our entire page in JavaScript. And so doing something imperatively this way, where I have to tell it step by step how to create the element and then to add some text content and then add a class name and then append it to the DOM, that's going to get old pretty fast, especially even with something mildly more complicated than a single H1, like a very simple web page like this.
Yeah.
As soon as we have more than one element, suddenly our 4 lines of code will become probably dozens or maybe even hundreds of lines of JavaScript code just to create and append all of these elements in the correct order and in the correct way.
Yeah.
And so that brings us back to the idea of writing our code declaratively, and React allows us to do that in a really simple way. As we see back up top, when we comment this out and uncomment this, we essentially get to write our JavaScript as if it were HTML. We are relying on React to figure out how to turn what we have declaratively written as an H1 into the JavaScript code that's needed to append it to the DOM. In fact, if I were being strict and wanted to make this more equivalent, in order to add a class name, I can just add a class name as if this were an HTML element. Again, this is class name instead of class for a good reason, which we'll talk about. But that's a pretty minor difference to be able to do all of these lines of code in one single section right here. And that difference is going to compound as we get into more and more complicated UIs like we see here. So at this point, I could probably continue talking about different reasons that we're choosing to use React and that it will be really beneficial for you to learn React. As you see on my little list here, it's a very hireable skill and it's actively maintained by really skilled people at Facebook.
Nice.
However, at this point, I think we're overdue to just jump into the syntax, get your hands on the keyboard, and start learning and practicing React. So when you're ready, let's keep moving forward.
Let's do some React.
Okay, let's finally address this elephant in the room, what we're looking.
Okay, so 10 minutes here, and then exercise, I think, somewhere in there. That should take us straight to break.
Here, why we have what looks like HTML stuffed right inside our JavaScript. Well, fairly early on in the days of React, the React team created a syntax that's called JSX. JSX stands for JavaScript XML,
Extension.
but that's not terribly important for you to memorize.
XML.
What's most important is to think of it as sort of a flavor of JavaScript that looks a lot like HTML. And with the introduction of JSX into React, it really made it so that React was very declarative instead of imperative.
I see.
We can see up above what it took for us to create an H1, give it some text content, and give it a class name in regular vanilla JavaScript. But with JSX, the benefit is that we can just write what we're already used to writing with HTML. Now there's a couple of small differences. For example, instead of using class, I need to use class name. So I might say class name equals header, for example. And there's a few other of these, but for the most part, with JSX, we can just write the HTML that we're used to writing. At first, it might be a little bit confusing to write your HTML inside of your JavaScript, but I promise as you start doing React, it's really going to start making sense. You're going to learn to love JSX. Now, one thing that was really helpful for me to understand as I was learning was to see the difference between what JSX is and what our regular DOM elements are. So I'm going to do a few things. I'm going to uncomment these lines of code here.
Okay.
And I'm also going to take this piece of JSX and set it to a variable. We'll call it element.
Okay.
Then I can fix my React DOM.render by just putting element down here, and this will work exactly the same. But this allows us to console log it. So let's console log element, and I'll hit save so that this code will run. I'll open the console, and we'll see the differences here. First of all, on line 4, we are console logging the DOM element that we created with document.createElement. Yeah. And that's what shows up in our console as what looks like an HTML element here. So that's this line right here. However, when we console log our element that we created with JSX, what actually got returned to us was this. And let me copy this out.
An object.
And we can see that this is just a regular JavaScript object. Let me clean it up just a little bit to make it even more clear. So in the end, what we get from JSX, or rather what React is creating with JSX, is actually just plain old JavaScript objects. And those objects describe the DOM element that we want React to put onto the page for us. And if we look closely, we can see some interesting information here.
There are nested objects.
We see that it has very similar properties, like we have class name, where we're setting that to header. And down here we have props, or short for properties, and we have class name. We also have something called children. And we can see that's actually the text that we put inside of our H1. That's about all I care to touch on with the object nature of React elements, but I thought it would be helpful to kind of kick us off understanding that JSX is kind of like a function that when it's run, returns us objects that React can interpret and use to create actual elements that get put on the screen for us.
I see.
I'm going to comment this out so we can talk about one more thing, clean up this a little bit. And I'll go ahead and put this directly back in line to my React DOM.render, move these onto their own lines. The last thing that I wanted to touch on was that with JSX, we need to make sure that we are only returning a single parent element. In other words, I can't take this one h1 and place, say, a paragraph directly next to it, because in this case, we're rendering or attempting to render two sibling elements that sit side by side. In fact, if
Sibling
I try to run
elements.
this, you can
I see.
React complains, and I guess in this case it says unknown error. Sometimes it will say that you have to wrap the elements that you're trying to render in some kind of parent element. Now, this doesn't mean that I can't put two elements on my page at any given time. It just means that I need to wrap them in something like a div, for example. So if I say a div that has an h1 and a paragraph inside,
Yeah, and now they're children
I am
elements.
rendering just one parent element, and it doesn't really matter how many children elements are included, as long as I have one parent element that I'm rendering. So I can hit save. We'll see that this is working just fine.
Fair
Now,
enough.
remember how I was able to save my h1 as a variable? Well, I can actually save a whole collection of JSX, for example, this div with the h1 and the paragraph, as a variable. So let's say const page equals, and then I can paste in my elements here. Now, to me, this looks a little bit crazy. So normally what I like to do is move my elements, my JSX, onto their own lines as if this were HTML.
Yeah.
But in that case, I need to go ahead and wrap everything in parentheses.
Okay.
Now, take a second and think, how is it that I can then fix what I have down here? We can see we have a syntax error. How can I fix this so that when I refresh the page, this is still working? Pause here and see if you can figure out how to make this work again.
Okay. I think it's fairly simple. Page here is now a component, though. So I think I'm going to try first inserting... I don't think I can just insert page. I think I have to insert page like this. Maybe. Run this. No. It doesn't like that. So I guess it's just... you put in the variable. Okay. Cool.
Well, all of my JSX is being saved under the variable of page, so I should just be able to put page here and hit refresh, and sure enough, that's working just fine. Hopefully some of you were kind of curious to see what this looks like as a JavaScript object. If we console log page,
I should have been a little bit more curious, is what I'm
essentially
hearing.
we got what we had last time, but this time it's a little more involved. Specifically, in the children property of
Actually,
our
let
div,
me just see this here. So console log page. I'm gonna do this, and I'm just gonna paste this here. Wait. Is there props within props? Looks like it. Oh, actually. Okay, we're gonna have to take a look at this. There's so many nested objects in here. What is happening? Wait, what's this? Expected something. So I must have copied something incorrectly. Oh, okay, I see. Must have. Props. Children key ref type props. And then you have a second one. Oh, I see. That's your first object. Store. Okay. This can go back one. This can go back one. I see what's happening now. Okay. It's because there were two children Um. Okay. Where is the rest of... Oh, I don't think it copied over everything. That's fine. It is what it is. But essentially what it does is that you have your parent div with your two children, an H1 and a P. Okay.
We see that there's other React elements in there. I'm not going to dive too deep into that. Feel free to copy and paste what you see in the console, maybe clean
just
it up
did.
a little
Thank you very
bit
much
and
for
analyze
giving me
it.
permission.
But the point is, I can save a whole bunch of JSX into a single variable and then use that variable kind of like any other variable. And the key is that's because what I'm getting back when I write my JSX is just a JavaScript object. Okay, I'm going to clean this page up a little bit. And I'm going to comment out our page because I'm going to give you a challenge.
Oh, very nice.
Okay, I left our example of const page up here just for reference, but I did delete our code that we had at the bottom, which actually enabled us to put something on the screen. And that's because I want you to practice it again. So
Okay.
Your challenge is to create a navigation bar using JSX. I've given you some instructions here on what the content should actually be. And as I mentioned at the very end, don't worry about styling yet. We're going to cover styling soon, but for now, what you're going to have is just going to look like plain HTML that's unstyled.
Okay.
So pause the screencast here and see if you can complete this challenge.
I'm going to pause here for a moment, and I think... Why doesn't it tell me? Where is it ever supposed to tell me that ads are supposed to be coming up soon? Because I thought it's supposed to... Stream marker... Watch party... Okay. So, here's what I'm going to do. I know. Okay. We'll do this. I'm going to take a 5-minute break here. I'm going to run a little bit of ads, and I will be back. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. All right. Hey everyone, welcome back. We have 30 seconds left, so we're just gonna wait out this timer, and then we'll go back to where we left off. We're gonna start off with the exercise again. I think I'm gonna do this form of stream in 2-hour bursts. I think it's probably like the best idea, and then that way I'm going to upload these videos to YouTube so that you can reference them later on if you are following along and you want to learn alongside. And you want to see what I've done, or you just want to have them on running in the background. And I appreciate if you are lurking, if you can give me a follow on my socials. But yeah, let's see here. Create a navbar in JSX. So we're going to use the semantic nav element as the parent wrapper. This was our challenge here, and what we are going to do is have an h1 element with the brand name of your website. Insert an unordered list for the nav elements, and then inside of the UL have 3 LIs for pricing, about, and contact. And don't worry about styling. We're just going to make it look like plain HTML for now. Okay, sounds good. Shouldn't be too complicated. We're going to start off with rendering our element. So we're going to say React DOM dot render, and we're going to do 2 things. So the first thing is we're going to open up a parent element, which we're just going to call a div for now. Oh, never mind. It wants us to use a nav element. So we're going to do a nav. Right? And in our nav, it says we're going to have an h1 with the name of our website. We're going to call it Sino Technologies. We'll close this h1, and then in there, insert an unordered list. Right? And in our unordered list, have 3 LIs for pricing, about, and contact. Alright, so I'm just going to do this for the sake of simplicity. LI, and paste and paste. And this is going to be pricing, about, and contact. And we still have a missing. We're not done yet. We still need to do one last bit, and it is to tell it where to render this. So I think it's get element by ID, and we're going to want to render it in our root, right? And if we run this, Sino Technologies, and then we have our pricing, about, and contact. Very nice. Cool.
Okay, before I worry about the React DOM.render bit, I'm going to create a new variable. We'll call it actually, let's call it navbar. And I'm going to use my parentheses so that I can start my element on the next line. And like I mentioned, we want to use the
he's going to do it by
nav
putting it
element
into a
and inside of there, I'm going to have an
variable.
h1. Let's call it Bob's
which is
Bistro.
Smart, because then that way it
Maybe
would be
this is a
easier for you
restaurant.
to
Okay. And then
debug.
we have an unordered list. And hopefully while you were playing with this, you came to realize that it doesn't matter how nested I get. Just like in HTML, I can nest this as deep as I want. We'll create 3 list items. And it said pricing, about, and contact. And
I wonder. Oh, you can do this. Okay. Nice. So if you press Alt and Shift, and then if you press down, it will copy the thing down, like the line that you are hovering over down. And if you press Alt and Shift and you press up, it will copy it upwards.
I don't know. Maybe if this is a restaurant, I'll say menu instead of pricing. Okay, I've got my JSX for my navbar set up. And then the last bit, which was just meant to be something repetitive that allows you to get some muscle memory for this, is to use React DOM.render. And the first parameter is what do I want to render, and that's my navbar JSX. And the second thing is where do I want to render it. I'm going to do that by selecting with getElementById my div with the ID of root that is over in my index.html right there. Okay, I should hit save, and sure enough, it's pretty ugly. Obviously, we want to style this.
Bob's
We're going to get to
Bistro.
that soon. I hope that challenge went well for you. If
Thank
you
you, thank you. It
struggled,
did go well.
please don't keep pushing forward. Go back, rewatch this lesson, see if you can do this again from scratch,
Yeah.
or maybe just try typing it 10 or 15 times if you need to. Also, if you get totally stuck, don't forget that this is a community. You can reach out on Discord, ask your question, and you are more than
important to be part
likely
of a
to
community.
get a really friendly, helpful response back. When you're feeling pretty good about this, let's keep moving forward.
Drag and drop deploy with Netlify. Oh, that's kind of cool. Oh.
Hey, Treasure here. Before you move on with React, I'd like to show you how you can deploy this project to the web in just a few seconds using Netlify. It's a really good idea to get into the habit of deploying the projects you work on. It's an important skill to have in your developer toolbox, and hopefully you'll find it motivating to be able to share your projects to the web, post to social media, and things like that. I won't go into too much detail about this, but because we've set up the React project using Babel standalone, we can deploy to Netlify in one very simple step. Just keep in mind for the future that if you are working on a React project that is not using Babel standalone via the CDN, there will be a couple of extra steps to deploy to Netlify. I'll be back to cover that later in this course. The first step is to make a Netlify account if you don't already have one. So you can click the link or the image to go to netlify.com, and once you're there, you can click sign up. You have several options to connect an account, or you can use your email, and once you've done that, you'll be taken to a get started page. You can fill out however you'd like, and then scroll down and click setup and continue. That's all you need to do with Netlify at the moment, so back in your Scrim, you'll want to download the project files by clicking the gear and download as zip. Once the zip file is on my computer, I can unzip it, and here's my project folder with all of my project files inside. Now go to Netlify's drop site. You can click on the image or the text to go to app.netlify.com/drop, and all you'll need to do from here is drag and drop your entire folder into this site, or you can browse to it. Just make sure that you drop the whole folder and not the individual files. And that is basically all you need to do. Once you do that, you'll be taken to this site overview dashboard, and Netlify will automatically generate a random URL for your site. At first, it will say site has not yet deployed, but after a couple of seconds, you should be able to refresh, and here is a link to your project. If I click on this, you can see my project is now on the internet, and this is a link to it, just like any other link. You can send this to your friends, send this to your grandmother, post it to social media, whatever you'd like to do. Let me review really quickly. Just
that's what I should start doing. Is that I should take some time to
deploy your project. You'll want to sign up for a Netlify account, download and unzip the files from your Scrim, and then drag and drop your project folder to app.netlify.com.
You should let your work talk for you.
Keep in mind that this deploy method will only work if you're using Babel standalone. You'll learn more later about React projects that are set up a little differently.
Okay.
Have fun continuing to learn about React, and bye for now. I'm not going to do this step.
I'm going to just continue moving forward until I get to a point where I am it's necessary for me to start uploading my projects, which should come fairly soon. Fairly soon.
Hey there, I'm Gil, a teacher at Scrimba. Nice work
Gil.
completing this section of your React course. I'm sure you have lots of thoughts and questions racing through your mind about what you're learning, and maybe even starting to think of projects to build with the new concepts you've learned. While learning React is fun and essential, it can also be a challenging library to learn, especially if you're quite new to JavaScript. It's completely normal if you find yourself revisiting various lessons throughout this course, or even previous JavaScript lessons to help you better grasp React. You can become skilled at React and a job-ready front-end developer with meaningful practice and guidance. So one way Scrimba students help accelerate the learning curve when it comes to learning React and JavaScript is by joining the Scrimba Bootcamp. The way improving regular
is this just an advertisement? It does feel like that. Okay. We're going to skip to the juicy parts. We don't want to be advertised.
Okay, at this point, it's probably time for us to switch away from the easy way of getting React set up in our project to the more correct way. Now, inside of Scrimba, that means something different than it means inside of your own local environment. Scrimba has kind of some magic that's happening under the hood that's helping React just kind of work in our project. So I'm going to show you a couple steps for how I do this in Scrimba. You won't really have to worry too much about that because even when you're creating your own new scrim in Scrimba, it'll just ask you what type of scrim you want and you'll just tell it that it's a React scrim and it'll set everything up for you. So what I need to do is in my index.html, I'm actually going to remove all of my unpackage.com CDNs here. So I can get rid of these 3 lines. And I don't need this type text Babel anymore because I'm not pulling in Babel. And instead, over here on the left, I'm going to add the dependencies that I need. And I need React, and I need React-DOM. If you're a little bit more familiar with developing in JavaScript, you might recognize that these dependencies are similar to having a package.json where you install these packages through npm. If pretty much everything I just said doesn't make sense, don't worry about it at all. I am going to talk about different options for local setup later. If you absolutely need to follow along in your local environment instead of here on scrimba.com, you can continue to use the CDN way that we were just using like this. But otherwise, I just recommend doing things here inside of Scrimba. Our main focus is not going to be how to set up React, but rather how to write React. So I will take those back out. And now that I have taken those CDNs out, it means that I no longer have global variables added to my window like React DOM. So if I try to save this, we're going to see I have an unexpected token angle bracket. And that's because, well, it doesn't know what React is at all. What I need to do now is actually import React from React. This might not seem like it's doing anything because I'm actually not referencing React anywhere here. I've got React DOM, but that's something different. However, React is where the JSX syntax is defined, and so I need to import React in order for this to work at all. Now, the astute among you might be familiar with the fact that with React version 17, I technically don't need to import React. However, currently at the time of this recording, Scrimba is not yet set up to support the fact that React version 17 and above no longer requires you to import React in order for JSX to work.
Fair enough.
So anyway, throughout the duration of this course, I will be using import React from React, and that's because, well, I need to in this environment currently. Let's hit save again and see what we run into next. And this says, can I use
so I'm going to
import
pause here, and that was an important point to know. What version of React did you no longer need to import? If I can type, this would go much easier. Or much quicker, right? And we're gonna say React 17. But that was an important
outside
point.
of a module. And oh, you know what? I think that has to do with another sort of magic piece that is happening under the hood with Scrimba. So I'm going to add this .pack. That's not something you'll need to do in the real world. So this should be, React DOM is not defined. That's the error I expected to see. And that's because whenever we're using React DOM, I will also need to import React DOM from React-DOM.
Right.
And now, fingers crossed, I should get something that works again. Okay, there we go. We're back on the screen, and everything is set up a little more similar to how you normally would see a React project setup. Don't be overly concerned with all of these implementation details. However, this is how I'm going to be setting up my projects from here on. And at this point, we actually have enough knowledge for us to start working on this section's project, which is a static HTML page in React. However, before we jump into that, I want to exercise your brain with a little thought experiment, and we are going to do that in the next screencast.
Cool. React 18.
Before we move on, I wanted to include a quick update.
Create root.
Since this course was originally recorded, React has released React version 18 and React DOM version 18. And there's actually a pretty fundamental change to how you set up a React app from the beginning, like we show here. I think this update will be helpful, especially for anybody who is following along on their own machine and installing React from scratch, because React is automatically coming in as React version 18 now. And you're probably getting a warning. The change has to do with how React is rendering its root element, which, as we see here, originally is React DOM.render. You tell it what you want to render as the first parameter to the render method. And the second thing is where you want to render that, or the root of your application. Let's go ahead and update our dependencies to React 18. This is probably not something you're able to see, but you'll see these numbers change to 18.2. And then I'm going to hit save, and we'll see we get this new warning in the console. Now everything is working just fine, but it's telling us that react-dom.render isn't supported in React 18, and we should use something called create root instead. It also lets us know that until we switch to using create root with the new API, the app is going to behave as if it's running React 17. There's a lot of other really cool improvements that come with React 18 that we are not going to be able to use unless we change the way that we are rendering our application. Fortunately, it's really simple. So let's close the console for some space. The very first thing we need to do is we are not going to import React DOM just from React DOM, but instead from a sort of subfolder called React DOM/client. So that's the first change, really simple. Second, instead of having render take two parameters, what you want to render and the root of your application, where you want to render it, instead you need to create a root first and then use that root to render what you want. I'm going to comment this out just for reference, and on the next line, I'm going to write the new way of doing this as a chain, and then we'll see how this oftentimes is represented like in the React docs as maybe not a chain, but separate commands. That'll make more sense when we do it. So first I'm going to say react dom.create root, and I need to tell it where I want the root to be. And so that's going to be my same root element here. I'm going to grab my document.getElementById root, paste it in there, and now this will return something called a root, and that root has a method called render. And render is going to be what we want to render. So I can put my navbar here. You can tell really we're just adding this method call to create root, and we're sort of rearranging the order in which we're doing things. Now I can hit save, everything is working, and our warning is gone. It may not seem like it, but under the hood, we're now running React 18 with all of the extra benefits that come with React 18. Now, I'm finding that the documentation doesn't usually, or at least doesn't very often, write the create root this way. Instead, they create a root as a separate line, and then they render that root. And so I just wanted to show you what that looks like so that it isn't confusing. Usually you'll see something like this that says the root is from react dom.create root, and then we have our document.getElementById call here. And then separately, they'll say root.render the navbar in our case. These two things are essentially equivalent. One takes two lines and one takes one line and chains the methods together. I believe there are other things you can do with root besides just render, so doing them on separate lines will give you that power if you need to. For everything that we do in this course, we would really just be rendering our JSX that we want to render, so if you're following along locally, you're more than...
So what just happened here? So navbar is just the variable. Const root is another variable, but it is... Okay, so it's just that whole... Okay. And then root.render, and then navbar. I see.
Welcome to just do this all in one line, or of course, if you want, you can do it in two lines. Now, because the remainder of this course was already recorded, I'm not going to be using this going forward, because the course will still be using React 17. But now, if you're following along locally, you'll know exactly what you need to do to follow along using React 18 without having to worry about that warning that keeps popping up. Okay, that's everything. Let's keep moving forward.
All right.
I'd like to do a quick thought experiment with you, and that is to figure out why we're using React dom.render instead of just using the DOM append method that you've probably used before in JavaScript. I've written the first line for you, and that's to import React from React. That will just allow you to write some JSX. Your challenge, as you can see in this little 4-step process here, is to create just a really simple sample page in JSX. It has to be greater than or equal to 4 elements just to get your fingers working a little bit. And I want you to save that JSX to a variable. Remember that that variable needs to be one parent element with some children elements nested inside of it.
Okay.
In other words, we can't just have 2 sibling elements saved in a variable in JSX.
Okay.
Then I want you to select the div with the ID of root using whatever selector you want to use, and then use .append to append your JSX.
Okay.
If you need to do a quick Google search for how to use .append, that's totally fine. And then before you run your code, I want you to see if you can guess what's going to show up in the browser before you run the code, and then run your code and see if you can explain what does show up in the browser. Pause here and play around with this a bit.
All right, so let's see. We need to create a sample page in JavaScript, in JSX, with greater than 4 elements and save them into a variable. And then, okay, so let's start off with that. So we'll say const root is equal to and nav, and we'll close this. With 4 elements, so we'll have an h1. Hello chat, and close this h1, and then we'll have an h2, and this is welcome to the channel. Welcome to Signal Technologies channel, right? And we'll do this, and then we're gonna have a paragraph. We're happy to have you here. Close this paragraph and span test, and we'll close the span. Cool. All right, so now that we have a variable with 4 elements, greater than 4 elements at the very 4 or greater, and select a div with the ID of root, and use .append to append your JSX. The div with ID of root. And see if you can still guess what shows up before running the code, and then do that. So it was, what was it? It was root.render root. But I need const element to be... Hey Chris, how's it going? Welcome to the stream. I'm doing some Scrimba work. Document dot get element by ID, and we're gonna do root, right? I'm gonna call this whatever. Hello, hello, hello. How are you? How's your evening going? And we're gonna say element dot render, and it's gonna. Oh, no! Don't open Steam. Stop! 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 Just saw the notification. Had to check my bro. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Where did you see the notification, by the way? I'm kind of trying to figure out, like, how should I advertise the stream? Because I'm trying to take this a little bit more seriously. Like, I keep telling myself that, but I think this is the time. Like, I journaled it, Chris. It's in the journal, and I'm recording these sessions separately on my computer, so that I can upload them with full quality up to YouTube as well, so that I have like a playlist of me like doing this work and stuff. It's gonna be interrupted because, like, obviously, like, I'm talking a lot, but this is just the nature of the stream, so hopefully, like, people will have me in the background. Something is not working here. It doesn't like it. Element.render is not a thing. See if you can guess what will show up in the browser before running the code, and see if you can explain what will actually show up in the browser. Element.render is not a function. Document.get element by ID. Oh. Is it maybe backwards then? Root.render element. And we're gonna render it inside of the element. But no, he said he was in Oh. So the challenge is to find out what will happen if we try to append JSX into our div root using .append instead of React DOM. I'm confused. What should I do here? Root equals get element. Root is equal to get element. Are you talking about line 15 or line 24? Then root.render. It says root.render is not a function. And I'm wondering, oh, render is because this was React 18. I think I was just confusing it with React 18. So let's see, what was it supposed to be here? It was React DOM.render root, right? And to append your JSX dot render element dot append child root. So I'm gonna have a div, then inside of the div it's going to be a nav element with an h1 and h2, a p, and a span. My bad, I just realized root is on top. Oh, no worries, Chris. But I think this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So I'm supposed to tell the React DOM to render my element, and then I think, okay, I'm gonna change this to nav just so that we have it be a little bit, just a tad bit clearer, right? So that way we understand what's going on. So const nav, we have our navigation, and I want it to render the div with the ID of root, and then add the nav afterwards, right? I think this should be what I'm looking for. No, React DOM is not defined. I think it's supposed to be import React DOM from React-DOM. So it wants me to do that here. React DOM is not defined. Oh, it's because I don't know how to type. Okay, target container is not a DOM element. Okay, so now I think we can do it back. So this will be nav, and this will be element. Is this? No, it is not. Target container is not a DOM element. I wonder. No, I want, so like I know for a fact I want to append this. Oh, wait, what am I doing? Literally, what am I doing? I think it's supposed to be nav here, and this is supposed to be element. Is this what I'm supposed to do? Yeah, I think this is what I'm supposed to do. I don't know why I was doing anything different earlier. Root docket, yeah. So, thank you, Chris. That's exactly the answer. I think that's exactly what it wants us to do. But instead of using React DOM, so okay, I see. So the answer here is that the challenge is that instead of using this line to generate this, I need to use div root dot append. Okay. Instead of React DOM. Dot append. I can't remember what dot append. Yeah, I have to do this back. I'm supposed to know this. We're all supposed to know this. We're all developers at this point. Oh man. Find out what happens if we try to use JSX to div root using okay, so let's see. Element.append child nav. Okay, so it's not append child, but append instead. Object. Well, we're further than we were before. But we are caught with object, and this is because it's sending it in a JSX. So if it's sending it a JSX... Huh. And I wonder if it's sending it JSX because that's exactly what this component here is. So I guess that is why parts 3 and 4 are questions, because I think this is the reason why we should be using React DOM rather than just simply append, because we are sending through a JSX element, and a JSX element is an object, as we saw before, and not an H1 component like we saw in the first part. And so if we're going to be using a regular JavaScript method to try and work with JSX components, I think we're going to see object. Am I talking out of my behind? I very well could be. Let's see what the rest of the video says. Okay,
well, let's create our JSX. We'll say const page equals, and I'll open my parentheses so I can write my JSX on its own line. And we'll start with a div just to surround everything. And I don't know, let's say I'm making a page about why I love React. We'll say this is my awesome website in React. And then maybe an H3 that says, here are the reasons I love React. And we'll use an ordered list. It's not terribly important what you actually put in here. I'll just use some of the reasons that I've been talking about. It's composable. It's declarative. It's a very hireable skill to have. Let's see, I need to get rid of this. And it's very actively maintained by some very skilled people. Again, the JSX you chose to put in here is not terribly important. So we'll
you
use
are my rubber duck.
.get element by ID
But
root,
at least this, this rubber duck will learn, right? But then that's also being like your rubber duck technically does learn.
Our page,
they're just not sentient
and
to
we'll see what
respond.
shows up here. Now, of course, I know what's going to show up, so I'm just going to run the code, and we see that we get object.
Aha!
This object is sort of a string representation of a regular JavaScript object. Something I can do to actually make that object appear is to stringify it using JSON. So I can actually say JSON.stringify. And
see,
we will
if I was a senior developer, I would have
JSON
remembered to JSON stringify
save,
it.
And look at that. We get a JavaScript object. Now,
I'm doing the same
step
course.
4,
I'm right
see
at
if
the
you
end
can
of the first
explain
section.
why this actually shows up in the browser.
If you would like to do it together,
the whole
I will
purpose of this
continue to be doing
experiment
this
was
on
to
a
remind
regular
you that
basis,
JSX
and I am planning on
returns
uploading it to my
plain
socials.
JavaScript objects. At this point in time, it has nothing to do with the DOM. It's not recognized by the browser as anything important dealing with the DOM.
Just yet.
It's only
my
when
socials,
we try to render it
if you keep an eye
using
on my Twitter,
React DOM.render, that React can take these JavaScript objects and actually turn them into real DOM elements that the browser can interpret
if I manage to figure it out
things
myself.
like
That's also
first-level
the
headers
other part
or
of it.
ordered lists. So let's go ahead for the sake of practice and fix this. I'm going to update our challenge here. Okay, simply put, your challenge is to fix our code. And don't forget, we're not using those CDNs in our
I'm also going to try and
HTML
do the
anymore,
TypeScript
which is
course
what
as well,
used to give us a global variable called React DOM. So you'll have to see if you can remember how we get access to React DOM. Pause the screencast here and try to fix our code.
Okay. It's so the challenge here is fix our code. Don't forget you're not using CDNs anymore, so there's no global React DOM variable to use. Yeah, so as I was saying, I'm planning on doing like a TypeScript course as well, the TypeScript course, and maybe then I'm gonna start building some projects and hosting them. These guys made a very good point, like literally a couple of minutes ago, and they were like, you should post your projects and host them so that, and post them onto your social media so that others can see them. React DOM.render, and it's going to be page, and it's going to be document.get element by ID, and we're going to do root. Oop. Perfect. My awesome website in React. And the reasons why I love React. Hi, Ed. Hi, buddy.
In order to use React DOM, I will need to import
I'm
it.
about to lose
And
access to
we'll
my
import
computer.
it from the React DOM package. Then instead of selecting my
Oh, never mind, he
div
just
with
went straight
the
to his
ID
bed.
of
That's good.
root, actually I'm going to need that anyway, so I will leave that code there. I'll say React DOM.render. The thing I want to render is my page, so we'll put page, and the where I want to render it is inside of that div with the ID of root. I'm going to comment this out so it doesn't break it. We'll hit save, and there we go. Awesome. So simply put, React DOM's job, or the React DOM.render method's job, is to take React elements and interpret them in a way that turns them into real DOM elements that the browser can understand. Okay, with that understanding, it's only a small jump to work on our section project, which is to build a static page in React. We're going
Very
to
nice.
start the first steps of that in the next screencast.
Cool. So I think that will be a good spot to leave, because then the next time we start up the course, it will be a little bit of an active recall session to remember how we started off the project and then dive deeper into building our static web page. I think that's a good idea.
Okay, we're finally at our first challenge. I'm really excited to start working on this. I've included a Google slide of what you're aiming for with this challenge. Notice there's really no styling being applied here at all. It's just bare HTML. So
Okay.
if we go look at the challenge, essentially you are starting completely from scratch, and your job is to build the HTML for our section project as you see it here. We'll be adding just a little bit of styling to it later after we learn how to do that. And I've included a couple hints here. For simplicity, I've imported the React logo file directly into our file explorer here, which means that you can reference it in your image element that you create with source equals and then using a ./react-logo.png. I also have a hint here about how to set the width attribute.
seems
Just
like we
remember
might
that
actually,
JSX is almost identical to HTML. And in fact, for what you're working on here, you really shouldn't see any difference between the JSX that you'll write and what you would normally write in HTML. Don't forget that we are no longer using our CDNs, so you'll have to remember how to bring in React, React DOM, and so forth. That's all the hints I'm going to give you. So
Cool.
pause the screencast here and work on this challenge.
All right. Paused. So let's start tackling this then. So I need to recreate this. Essentially what I think I have here is this might be like an H1. We have an unordered list here with a couple of points. And I think we'll take some time to actually build it out as it is. We have our hi Al. We have our logo up here on the top, so we'll start off with that. So we're gonna do import. Oh, Al is zoomy, so it must have been like he must have just had a bathroom break. Import React from React, and I know it says here that we're just gonna follow what Scrimba recommended we do. All right, so now that we've imported our React and React DOM, we are going to create a page variable. So we'll say const page is equal to, and we're going to open up a bracket because what's going to happen is going to be a div, right? And in our div, we're going to have our h1. And like we said, it was, you might not be able to see the picture, but I'm just going to pull it up again. It says fun facts about React. Fun facts about React. And we're going to close our tag, right? Now that we've closed our tag, we have our oh wait, we have one thing that we need to take care of first. Before our h1, we actually have an image tag with a source of React logo.png. Excuse me, sir. Where is your image? Thank you for reminding me, Chris. I managed to get there. But we'll use that. We'll use our unordered our UL right now. Okay. And we'll close our what am I doing? UL. And in our unordered lists, we have 5 bullet points. So we're gonna do an li, and like I mentioned earlier, if you use Shift and Alt and you press down, you can copy it. And then in our first one, it says was first released in 2013. Oh, was first released in 2013. Senior was originally created by Jordan Walk. Was originally created by Jordan Walk. And has well over 100,000 stars. Oh, has well over 100,000 stars on GitHub. Maintained by Facebook. Is maintained by Facebook. And then powers thousands of enterprise applications, including mobile apps. Okay. Which is important to know, because I think eventually I want to also get into mobile development. So thousands of web applications, I think that's what it was, including mobile applications, right? And so now that we have this built, we need to render it. So we have React DOM. And so what are we going to render? We need to render page, and where are we going to render it? And it's going to be in our document, and specifically we're going to be targeting our root element with our root ID. If I run this, I think this should work. Oh, look at that! Cool. I think that's good enough representation. Perfection. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. My picture obviously trumps his picture, though. But yeah, let's continue with the video. Let's see what it says.
Well, first things first, let's import React from React and import React DOM from React-DOM. We can't really do anything until we've done that. Then I'm going to save a variable called page. And as a heads up, this isn't actually going to be a very common way for us to deal with JSX. We're going to see very soon how we can do this in a more conventional way. For the sake of learning, though, I think this is a good way for us to start. Just to do a bit of a sanity check, I'm going to just throw an h1 in here. It says testing, and then do my last step, which is React DOM.render. And we want to render our page. And we want to put it at the div with the ID of root. Let's see if that's working.
He didn't even add his picture. Oh, he's just testing.
He's
doing it the proper way.
Set up correctly. Okay, so let's start building our page here. I'm going to surround everything in a div just because I can only have one element here, rather one parent element here instead of any sibling.
The junior
elements.
dev way.
And the first thing I'll put in
making sure
is
everything
an
is done
image.
properly.
And just like in HTML, I can provide an image source. And like I mentioned up in the hints, I'm going to have react-logo.png. The / just means look in the same folder for a file called react-logo.png. Now, if I refresh this, I'm going to get a pretty large image here. So just like in HTML, I can set the width to be something specific.
That's not separating your concerns.
And that looks a little more manageable, a little less crazy, not taking up my whole screen. Next, I've got something that looks kind of like an
You have an
H1 that says
index.css
fun
right there.
facts about React. So we will add that in there. And awesome. Now, because my H1 is a block element, it has floated below my image, even though my image is technically an inline element. And that's kind of to be expected, or rather that's what we're aiming for. And then it looks like the last thing is an unordered list with these 5 list items. So I'll go ahead and add that unordered list. We'll do some list items. I'm going to hold Shift Option down to copy the lines.
He covers it here. Okay, I see.
And then just start typing in some of these facts.
But Shift Option is the Mac version. On Windows, it's Shift and Alt.
Okay, and yeah, these are some pretty interesting facts about React. I'll hit save, and awesome. It looks like we essentially got to where we wanted to get to with our goal here. I'll go ahead and clean up some of my comments up here from the challenge. And great work. Hopefully you were able to follow along with that. Now, like I mentioned, saving all of our JSX to a single variable like this actually isn't really that common, nor is it convenient at all. So what we're going to start covering is a much more common way, and that is by creating custom components. Before we jump into that, I want to give you a quick quiz over the topics that we've talked about so far, and we will do that in the next screencast.
Oh, a quiz would be actually a good spot for us to stop. We can start off with a quiz, or should we end off with a quiz? I think we're going to end off with a quiz. Okay, we end off with a quiz, and then after the quiz, we come back to, well, what's tomorrow? Thursday? I don't think it's going to be a bad day. I think I can continue picking this up tomorrow. So we'll do this tomorrow again, continuing to try and finish the first chapter. And yeah, continue going about this. Let's start our quiz.
Before jumping right into the next topic, I thought it would be smart to have
these might be
quick
actually
little
good
pop quiz
questions to
on
add
some
to
of the topics
our
that we've
Anki
covered
deck,
up to this point.
actually.
Because this is Scrimba, you can just click into this quiz.md file and answer the questions here. So pause the screencast and work on this quiz.
All right, chat. Let's work on this quiz together. So it says here that the question here is, why do we need to import React from React in our files? Because we are no longer, I'm going to put it this way. Because we are no longer using scripts in our HTML file to import React into our application, we must import React as a dependency so that our application can recognize it. And so now, if it's just to say, question number 2 is to say, if I were to console.log page in index.js, what would show up? Okay. Fair enough. Easy enough, sounds like. If you console.log page, what would show up? If page was console logged, an object representing the JSX element would be rendered for React to read it, right? Because it doesn't render an HTML tag, it renders a JavaScript object. Let's just actually be a little bit more specific. A JavaScript object gets rendered. And it says here, what is wrong with this code? Const page is equal to this. This is my website. Specifically, what is wrong with this code? The H1 and the P elements are sibling elements. React can only render one element, and all of its children elements. Okay. I feel like that's okay. How many elements can a React component render? And we're just going to say 1. Okay. And what does it mean for something to be declarative versus imperative? So declarative is okay. I remember this being like imperative is telling the code what to do every step of the way, and declarative I can't remember anymore. Nor can I remember what it means to be composable. Chat, what was declarative programming? I remember imperative being like telling the computer to do things every step of the way. And declarative is telling the code how. Composable think components. Okay. I see. Is declarative that you are declaring variables and then React then fills in the gaps and builds the components for you? Is that what it is? Let's see. Declarative programming. Yes, you think. Okay. In computer science, declarative programming is a programming paradigm, a style of building the structure and elements of computer programs that expresses the logic of a computation without describing its control flow. Many languages that apply, yeah, so that's exactly it. You give it like, you tell it what to do and it fills the gaps for you. Many languages that apply the style to minimize or eliminate side effects by describing what the program must accomplish in terms of the problem domain, rather than describe how to accomplish it. This is what, okay, yeah, we got there. So declarative programming is telling the program what to achieve and allowing React to fill in the gaps. Perfect. And what is composable? React is built in components. Therefore, it can be reused. Therefore, those components can be reused whenever needed, making them easy to recycle, I guess, making them easy to be reused. I don't know. Therefore, the components can be reused whenever needed. That's a full sentence right there. Perfect. Period. Nice. All right. I think let's finish off this video here, and then we will end the stream for the evening. Macro. Welcome to the stream. How long have I been the senior dev for? You know, since I first laid hands on a keyboard. I've been senior ever since. Seniority came with the title. Welcome to the stream. Thank you for stopping by. You're stopping by just as I'm about to
import React from React in our
end
files?
the stream.
Well, it's because the JSX syntax
But we're
is
learning
defined
React.
in React, and if we were to remove React,
I am educating an
we'd see
educator at this
that
point.
it's telling us
Look at
React
that.
is not defined. Even though we're not using React in our code, the JSX here sort of demands that React be a part of our code base. So I will go type that over here. React is what defines JSX. So in order to use JSX, we need to import React. If I were to console log the page in our index.js file, what would show up? Hopefully you actually attempted to answer this question before just going ahead and console logging it.
Yeah.
Before I hit save, I know that page is a bunch of JSX, which in reality just returns some JavaScript objects. So when I console log page, I should just see a JavaScript object here. And sure enough, there it is. If you look closely at that object, you'll see a children property, and that children property has more React elements nested inside. Well,
Thank
that's
you.
because
It
we
is
have
really
our
tough.
React element here with children that
Trying
are
to
more
code in public
React elements.
on a regular basis has
So
been
over here we
a
can say
struggle for me. I found recently.
JavaScript object.
I get online
These
and then
are
I don't
React elements
come back online.
that describe
But I'm trying to be a little bit more
what React should eventually add to the
proactive
real
with it
DOM
and more
for us.
consistent with it.
Okay, number 3. What is wrong with this code? Hopefully you noticed that
And thank you
our
for the follow.
JSX
Oh my god, and
here
thank you for the
is 2
subscription,
sibling
Macro.
elements. And
Thank you so
remember
much. I appreciate
that.
that.
We actually need
Welcome to the stream.
all of our JSX
give me
to
a
be
follow on
nested
my
under
socials.
a single parent element. As a quick sneak peek, in the future, you may learn that you can use something that looks like an empty tag like this,
So that you'll
in
know
order
in the future
to
when I'm
wrap
online. I'm
your
going to try and be more
JSX
consistent. I
in
promise
something
this
that
time around.
doesn't actually create another parent element. These are called fragments, but that's
But so
more
far,
a
so
little
good with our
piece of
quiz,
trivia.
by the way.
We're not going to concern ourselves
We
too
seem
much
to
with
be
that
right
in this
on
course.
uh
Next is number
right
4.
on par
What
with
does
all
it
of the
mean for
answers that
something
we
to be
needed to hit.
declarative instead of imperative? The way we described it before was to say that declarative programming meant I could tell the program what to accomplish, and it
I
would
do have a
know
Discord
how
channel,
to
by the
accomplish
way,
the
Macro.
specific step-by-step details.
I try not to
whereas
mention it in the other
imperative
Discord
meant
channel
I
because it
still
kind of
needed to
breaks
tell the
TOS, but
computer
this is fair
step
game.
by
This is my
step
channel
how
here.
to do everything. An example I like to think of this is to imagine myself asking a friend to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich for me. If I were doing that
Okay, we should pay attention here.
declaratively, I could simply say, could you make me a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? And I would assume that they knew how to take care of the individual steps to do so. If I were being imperative, on the other hand, I would have to tell them to grab a slice of bread with their fingers and place that slice of bread gently on a plate. Then to grab a knife from the drawer and to put the knife into a jar of peanut butter and so forth. There certainly are times when something imperative is warranted. However, generally speaking, writing code declaratively is a much better developer experience and honestly usually leads to fewer bugs in the end. So declarative
Sounds good.
means I can tell the computer what to do and expect it to handle the details. Imperative means I need to tell it how to do each step. And lastly, what does it mean for something to be composable? Well, that just means that I can create small pieces that I put together to make a greater whole. In terms of web development, it means I can take pieces of my UI, my user interface, and put them into their own components, and then piece those components together to build my page. So what does it mean for something to be composable? It means that we have small pieces that we can put together to make something larger, and I'll even say greater than the individual pieces. This is a pretty broad definition of composable because the idea and concept of composability extends throughout all of computer programming, not just web development, and especially not just React. But I think we've gotten the point across. I'm really excited to keep moving forward. We are now going to jump into sort of the baseline level of React and start learning how to create our own components, and it's just going to get more and more exciting from there.
Perfect.
So strap yourselves in and let's keep moving forward.
All right, and I think I'm going to press this X here, and we're going to pause here. I didn't realize that the music stopped at some point throughout the stream because the playlist ended. But that's no big deal. Okay, so fairly productive day. We made it, what, 15 chapters in? We 15 parts in through the first chapter. maybe going at this rate, we may be able to finish the first section by the end of the next video, or by the end of the next stream. It does look like the video lengths are a bit longer on. Oh, come on. Right, 6 minutes here, 7 minutes here, 9 minutes there. Oh, we're using Vite here. Okay, because I haven't used Vite before. So that's going to be interesting to learn. Navbar and styling, main sections. So we get a little bit more interactive and in-depth the next time. Tune back in. I will be back tomorrow. I have decided, it has now been manifested. It is out there in the world. Specifically around what time? Well, what's tomorrow? Thursday. Let's say I will try to stream around 5 p.m. Eastern. Vite is a lot lighter than Create React app. Yeah, that's what I've heard, and I'm excited to try it out and play around with it and see how it goes. So tomorrow I feel like I'm going to pick up a couple of things that are a little bit more exciting, a little bit more in depth. I feel like I will learn a little bit more rather than just touch on front end JavaScript versus like focusing mainly on rendering JavaScript. I will definitely be tweeting as I get closer to the appointment then. Again, I'll probably be on around 5 p.m. Eastern. Try to get some food in before then, and we'll do another 2 hours. It should be a good time. I hope to see everyone there. What I'm gonna do though is I'm gonna take 3 minutes. I'm gonna run a quick ad before we end the stream, and we'll call it here. Thank you everyone for joining. I really appreciate you guys so much. Everybody who helped in the chat. Today is 100 dev score 2 1 year anniversary. It is well, actually, is it today? It is today. It is today. Happy 1 year anniversary, Chris. As friends or bros. Yeah, I know. I saw the tweet. It's been a life-changing experience. I'm excited. I'm so happy that I met with the community. Bros, let's go! Happy anniversary! Let's go! Let's go! Let's go! Yeah, thank you everyone for joining. Thank you everyone for stopping by. Definitely life-changing. Chris, you know where to reach out to me. You know how to get a hold of me directly. If you need help with anything, or you're like there's anything that I can help you out with, just let me know. Or if there's anything that you need. But yeah, thank you everyone. I'm going to play some ads here, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. 5 p.m. Eastern. 5 p.m. Eastern. Be there.